Hi, I'm Steve Rose. I've been a chef for 38 years, was the owner of the greenest restaurant in the entire San Francisco Bay Area, and now I'm a farmer here at Rose Ranch. We do things green around here. What sets me apart is that green is not just a buzzword like a lot of people use. Green is an operative word, and it really is easy to do. I'm going to share with you my secrets on how to do this at home. We're going to have fun, and living green, living truly green, is really a blast. I believe that people want to learn how to live this way, they just don't know how to go about it. And that's the whole purpose of the show, is to teach people how to do it. I'm going to show you the way, show you the pathway to green living. Welcome to the Organic Rose. Elizabeth, how are you?
Steve.
Great to see you.
The farm looks beautiful.
Thank you so much. It's that great time of year when everything's just starting to develop and grow and doing its thing. This is my really good friend Elizabeth from Demeter. And tell us a little bit about what you do.
I'm the managing director of Demeter. We say Demeter in the U.S. It's Demeter in Europe.
Yep, okay.
Exactly. And actually, Demeter is the oldest ecological certification organization in the world, and I'm the director of the U.S. branch.
Excellent. So, why do we farm biodynamically?
Well, you know,
as opposed to organically.
Sure. I'd love to tell you a little history lesson, if you don't mind.
Yeah, that'd be great.
You know, biodynamic was first described in the 1920s as a response to the industrialization of agriculture. A group of farmers were very concerned about what they were seeing on their farms. It's really important to think about that in the context of the times, because after World War I, chemical companies that had stockpiles of nitrogen that they had used to make bombs and nerve gas found new application for those materials on farms. And what they told farmers is, if you bring this stuff onto the farm, you're going to increase your productivity. Very much this kind of industrial view of trying to produce the highest output at the lowest cost. The problem was that the true costs of that type of farming, soil degradation, water issues, air pollution, animal suffering wasn't really considered. And so these farmers were really noticing that their seeds weren't germinating. Their farms just weren't as vital. The food wasn't as good. And so they approached a gentleman named Rudolf Steiner, who's most known here in the US as the founder of Waldorf Education. And they asked him, what's going on our farms? And what he said in 1924 was both very simple and revolutionary. He said, you have to stop thinking of your farms as factories and envision them as living organisms, self-contained, self-sustaining, following the cycles of nature. After he talked to those farmers, that group of farmers got together to codify what he had talked about in a farm standard, and in order to ensure its uniform adherence in the marketplace, developed a certification program. So as I said, Demeter remains the oldest ecological certification organization in the world.
So we started farming organically, certified organically 30 years ago, and then we decided to step it up to the next notch, which I consider biodynamic farming the next notch above organic farming. What are the differences between those farming methods?
It's so interesting, Steve, because if you go back in history long enough, they're really biodynamic is really the origin of organic. In fact, 17 years after Rudolf Steiner delivered the agriculture course, a gentleman named Lord Northbourne in England, who was an agricultural professor at Oxford, wrote a book called Look to the Land. And in that book, he talked about chemical farming versus organic farming, coining the term organic from Steiner's view of the farm as organism. So I always like to point out, if you go back far enough in time, they're not two separate movements, but one that emerged as a response to the industrialization of agriculture.
So the terminology organic came from the farm being a living organism.
Exactly. But when we talk today about the similarities and differences between biodynamic and organic, what we really want to focus in on is, what is the definition of organic? What are the requirements by the National Organic Program to be able to call a farm organic or to label a product as organic versus biodynamic? And the organic standard is the base to the Demeter biodynamic standard. So if a farm is certified biodynamic, it means that it's met the organic requirements even if it's not certified organic. But in addition to that, the entire farm must be certified. In organic, you can have a conventional farm and decide you're not going to use those prohibited materials in 10 acres and get that certified organic. Biodynamic, maintaining the idea of the farm as an integrated whole. The whole farm has to be certified. But perhaps most importantly, the idea of biodynamic is that you want the solutions to disease, pest, weed control to arise out of the farm system itself instead of being imported from the outside.
And it has to be, I mean, a lot of people consider our inspections that we have once a year to be kind of a pain in the, but you know what? We need to be transparent, I think. And we need to, my farming plan needs to show what I have and what I haven't applied to our soils and to our gardens and that sort of thing. Right. And I think transparency is super important when you're talking about farming that way.
It really is. A certification mark allows the consumer to know what stands behind the product that they're buying. And additionally, with biodynamic, I really like to think that having a farmer meet that standard every year helps that farmer farm better. So it's also an educational process. It sets a high bar that all farms never quite achieve completely a closed system, but you continue to strive to meet that goal.
Well, and every year when I have a different inspector come on the property and we schedule 3 or 4 hours of inspection time, I learn all the time. And it's not, oh, you didn't do this, so therefore you're going to lose your certification. You didn't do this, please work on doing it next year.
Exactly.
So it's an educational process for me as well. And I do go about learning quite a bit.
That's great. I'm really glad to hear that. And for you, I just wanted to say that for the people that are watching your show, just a very simple way to think about biodynamic is that it's just a very comprehensive form of organic farming.
Excellent. How many farmers are farming this biodynamically in California right now, certified?
Oh boy, in California, I can't tell you. Nationally, we have about 160 biodynamic farms. I can't tell you exactly how many now we have in California, but I think, well, definitely we have more biodynamic farms in California than the rest of the country. And it's really interesting. The reason for that really is the wine industry. That here in the United States, the wine industry was really the early adopter of biodynamic. It's been practiced in Europe, obviously, since the 1930s. And today in Germany, 10% of the organic farmland is biodynamic. There are thousands of products in the marketplace. There's even Demeter stores. But in the U.S., the winemakers were noticing that the very best wines in the world, Domaine Romani Conti, Zindhumbruck, were coming from biodynamic vineyards, and that got them curious. In addition to that, you have family wineries that are passed on from one generation to the next, and they were very concerned about ecological impacts of how they were farming. So those two reasons, really, product quality and the ecological farming, I think are the reason that the wine industry really embraced biodynamic, and now you're starting to see major brands in the U.S. market coming out with biodynamic products. And of course, there's a lot of wonderful small and medium-sized family farms that sell in their region, just like you do.
Like us, yeah. Mm-hmm. So we're actually one of 160 plus farms in the United States,
right, with
the certification.
Right.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, well, we hope it's going to be a lot more than that.
What can I do to drive that, or to help drive it?
You're doing it right now, because I think educating consumers about what biodynamic is and why they should care about it. At the end of the day, our products are only as good as the agriculture that stands behind them. So when you have an agriculture that's producing this kind of food, the reward to the consumer is that it's going to taste delicious, it's going to be super nutritious, but it's also going to help heal our planet through supporting this really important agricultural farming technique.
And that if that product, if these zucchini or these wine grapes carry that certification, that that's a super clean product that you're putting into your body.
Absolutely.
Which you should know.
Right.
And that kind of leads me to label reading and that sort of thing. That's really important to know what you're buying and what you're putting in your body as well, right?
Absolutely. Not only that, you know, agriculture is one of the leading contributors to climate change. And what we really want to do through the agricultural practices, we've released a lot of carbon into the air. But in biodynamic, the plants pull the carbon out of the air, put it back in the soil, which adds nutrition to our food. So when we're talking from an environmental standpoint, it's also really important to support the farmers that are growing this way.
That's good. So people should support us, and we will support them. And I think also what I've always believed in when we were in the restaurant business is that I've always, you know, if I didn't grow the product myself, I would always purchase certified organic product for the restaurant. If enough people do that, which now it's starting to become a little bit mainstream, the price of the final product in the marketplace goes down a bit. Because now it becomes affordable, because now I'm not just buying it, you're buying it and I'm buying it and he's buying it and she's buying it, and that's the same with biodynamic product, I would believe, right?
I hope so, over time, absolutely. But in the meantime, you know, you pay for quality, and so if the biodynamic products are a little bit more expensive, I think people can think of them as artisan products that are really well worth the extra it costs to get them.
Explain a little bit about the biodynamic certification process.
Okay.
And why I do what I do.
Well, every year you have to file your farm report.
Right.
And on that report, you describe exactly what you're farming, what you're growing, and certainly keeping track of any inputs onto the farm. So any input like synthetic fertilizers or pesticides that are prohibited from organic are also prohibited in biodynamic. Okay. But in addition to that, we're going to look and see, let's say you're bringing in a compost, you're bringing in a lot of fertility from outside the farm, organic. We're going to ask, well, what is it about the farm system that isn't able to create its own vitality? Maybe we should think about cover cropping. Maybe we should think about green manure. Maybe we should think about incorporating animals. So the idea always is to work with a farmer to see if they can create their toolkit just from the resources they have on the farm. And this is an annual inspection that you get. Somebody comes once a year and goes through that process on an annual basis.
And it's a total learning experience for me all the time. I mean, every year it is. And we've been really fortunate to have very knowledgeable inspectors to come and inspect our property and our land and our farm inputs and that sort of thing.
Yeah. Steve, the farm just looks incredible. What crops are you growing this year?
Thank you, Elizabeth. 4 or 5 varieties of corn, about 16 varieties of tomatoes, peppers that were contracted by a hot pepper sauce to grow for.
Incredible.
And we have squashes, summer squashes, winter squashes, eggplant, onions, garlic, carrots, potatoes, pretty much everything, you know, everything that you need and would need for your family and our friends and that sort of thing, and our farm workers as well. Lots of basil and oregano and thyme, rosemary, those type of herbs as well. So explain to our viewers why I have those certain biodynamic tools in my toolbox.
Okay, great. Well, I will say this. There are many tools in a biodynamic farmer's toolbox that are used by organic farmers. The difference is that in biodynamic, it's a requirement, and organic, it's not. So for example, tools in a biodynamic farmer's toolbox will be composting. Biodynamic farmers are intimately concerned about soil quality, so biodynamic farms always have these incredible compost piles. You know, in terms of incorporating fertility, you can bring livestock into a property, planting cover crops, green manure, which is really just plants that impart nutrients to the soil like nitrogen. Another important tool in a biodynamic farmer's toolbox that isn't in an organic farmer's toolbox is the use of the biodynamic preparations. There is a biodynamic, and these are created out of materials that a farmer can find on his or her farm. So an example would be Preparation 500, which is cow manure that's put in a cow horn. And this might sound odd, but it really makes so much sense. They're put underground in the winter, where they're maintained obviously at a consistent temperature. They're dug up in the spring, and you take that cow manure out and it smells like chocolate. It's this incredibly nutrient-rich material, and you put it in water and stir it, and then you spread it on the ground. And what that does is it increases the microbial life of soil. I always like to use the example of kombucha. You only need the most tiny bit of inoculant to make a huge vat of kombucha. That microbial activity in the kombucha comes from a small amount. The same is true for the soil. And then there's one that's used as a foliar spray to aid photosynthesis, and there's 6 that are used in the compost pile. So that's a unique tool to the biodynamic farmer's toolbox.
So biodynamics, organic farming, what does it do to food quality?
I love that question. Well, one big difference between the biodynamic standard and the organic standard is in the organic standard, there's one processing standard for all products. And in biodynamic, there's 16 processing standards. There's a processing standard for teas and spices, for oils, for wine, for dairy. The idea with the processing standards is to ensure that the integrity of those agricultural ingredients define the finished product. So what you have is these really high content biodynamic ingredients with minimal processing. And as I said earlier, our food is only as good as the agriculture that stands behind it. If you have depleted soil that's only been fed synthetic fertilizer, that soil is dead. Where is the food? How is that plant going to grab any nutrition from that soil when there isn't any soil there to have? In biodynamic, with this incredible focus on the microbial life of the soil, you have food that is vitamin, mineral rich, and just tastes delicious.
And so good for you.
Absolutely.
And your pets and your family. And I think it's really important to know what you're putting on that dinner table every night.
Absolutely.
Would you feed your son or daughter something that's been treated and processed with all these different chemicals? Well, you would not do that.
Exactly.
And as you're getting, organic and biodynamic certified product, you know that it's a clean, pure, transparent product.
Exactly.
That you're putting out for your family or your friends on the table.
We always say in the world of biodynamic, healthy farms, healthy people, healthy planet.
Biodynamic movement going in the future.
I always say we don't have a biodynamic crystal ball, but we can look to Europe to understand what a more mature U.S. market looks like. And as I said, 10% of the organic farmland in Germany is biodynamic. I mean, wouldn't that be incredible if we could meet that goal here in the United States?
And what do you think, what's your most important thing about biodynamic farming? If you had to choose one.
It's the way nature intended. And anybody who steps foot, I can talk for hours about what biodynamic farming is, but anybody who spends 5 minutes on this farm intrinsically knows this is where I want my food to come from. They're healthy, vibrant farms, and they support farmers that can have a healthy life. The farm workers can have a healthy life. And the food that's produced is the food that it's like our grandparents' garden. It's the way we know that our food should be grown intuitively.
And obviously everybody can't go to the extent of this, but I think it's so important that everybody tries. Mm-hmm. You touched on farm workers' health, family health, farm workers' health. That's so important. I'm not out there farming every acre here, obviously. We've got a full-time crew that are out there farming everything, but they're healthy as well. They eat these vegetables, they drink the wine made from these grapes, and everybody tends to be healthy.
Yeah, it's a wonderful lifestyle.
Even the roosters.
They seem very happy.
They are. Today we're going to discuss how important it is to eat right. I went to the store earlier today and I picked up different cans and packages of different food items. So here's a can of soup. It has chicken stock, enriched egg noodles, niacin, ferrous sulfate, thiamine, mononitrate, riboflavin, folic acid, chicken meat, modified food starch. And then it goes on to water, monosodium glutamate, yeast extract, beta carotene, soy protein isolate, sodium phosphate, etc., etc. If you can't pronounce it, I wouldn't eat it. Here's a can of beans, and it's got prepared cannelli beans, white kidney beans, water, salt, calcium chloride, calcium disodium EDTA. I don't know what the hell that is. And this is simply a can of sweet potatoes, but it has water, corn syrup, and sugar in it, in addition to sweet potatoes. Why you'd need to put all that stuff in there, I have not a clue. Here's an all-American favorite. Enriched macaroni, wheat flour, durum flour, niacin, ferrous sulfate, iron, thiamine, mononitrate, riboflavin, folic acid, cheese sauce mix, milk protein concentrate, salt, sodium triphosphate, citric acid, lactic acid, sodium phosphate, calcium phosphate, with paprika, turmeric, and annatto added for color, enzymes, and cheese culture. I'm gonna make mac and cheese the right way. And we just start with some 100% durum wheat that I just prepared, boiled it. So you know that's just 100% that. And we'll go ahead and turn the fire on here a little bit. So yeah, I would avoid a lot of those things if you can possibly help it. Okay. This is one of the most basic dishes to do, mac and cheese. So what does it have in it? No riboflavins, no mononitrates, no triglycerins. It has pasta. It has whole milk. And it has grated cheese. All these things are really good for you. And it's so easy to prepare. And you just stir it a little bit. I like to finish mine off in the oven to get a nice crisp crust on the top of it. A friend of mine's brother makes it, and he uses condensed milk, and it gives it a little bit of a sweetness to it. So we're just waiting to get the cheese to melt into the milk. Let's give it a little bit of crack of pepper. And you really don't need to add any salt, although I will add a little bit because the cheese has quite a bit of salt in it. But we'll add a little bit for the pasta. Okay, so it's melting nicely. This is an easy dish to make for your family. It's not rocket science. But like I say, just whole milk, some cheese, and good pasta. That's all you really need. Some salt and pepper. That cheese is melting very nicely. With mac and cheese, you can use just about any kind of cheese. I like to mix them up. This one actually is a blend of Monterey Jack, Swiss, and Colby cheddar. So it's very important to know where your food comes from, to know what you're putting in your body. Hopefully it's a local product, an organic product, or a biodynamic. Biodynamic products are the tier above organic farming, which we farm that way. And it's just so important to know what your children are eating as they develop and get older and start to grow. So know where it came from, know what it is, know how it's farmed if possible. And don't be afraid to talk to your produce department and, ask them, where did these oranges come from? Are they California oranges? Are they Florida oranges? Are they Texas oranges? Were they farmed organically or weren't they? Were they farmed conventionally? So you're going to be putting this orange juice that you're squeezing for your children into their body. You need to have a little bit of good history behind your food. No different than asking the person behind the meat counter, where did this chicken come from? Where did this lamb come from? They should know, and they should be able to tell you. What type of catch methods for the fish that you're selling in the counter. All these things are important. And don't be afraid to ask the people that are manning these different counters, because they should know. Know what you're putting into your body. So I'm hoping that you learned quite a bit about that today, and we will catch you next time on The Organic Rose.